Hello everybody, my name is Joshua and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Coffee, Cats, and King, where we discuss books both new and old. I will share with you pictures of my cats who will make you wish they were your cats. And I'm drinking enough coffee for me and everybody watching. Speaking of cats, my mug today has many versions of cat behavior, as well as their helpful explanations. My coaster, in fact, is a cat, and many more cats on my shirt. And because you have been so patient with me, I'm going to give you some prime cat footage now. Alright, so we are back with another weekly wrap-up. This is my reading wrap-up for 4/26 through 5/2. We have officially started the new month. I'm still somewhat debating on whether I'm going to do a full TBR for May. I don't know. I've been in such a mood of just grabbing random things and going with it that I just don't know if I can commit myself to a monthly TBR right now. So I'm probably just going to keep doing it where I talk about the book or two that I'm reading currently or that I plan to get to next and just leave it at that. It wasn't a super productive reading week for me, especially considering that one of these books I didn't actually finish in this reading week. I just neglected to talk about it in last week's wrap up. So we will start with that one, talk about these three books, and then talk a little bit about the books that I'm reading currently and the ones that I'm jumping into after that. So the first book we're talking about, again, I actually finished the prior week, forgot to talk about it for some strange reason, but once again we are talking about cats. Apparently cats are just all over this one. So the book I am talking about is Cat's Paw by E.G. Stone. This is about a girl who celebrates her 18th birthday by getting very sick and a few hours later turning into a cat. She, of course, panics, does not know what to do, eventually turns back into a human, but this is sort of a turning point for her where she realizes there's no way that I can go back to just living a normal life after realizing that something supernatural and weird is going on here, right? So she moves to the city where she has a certain level of anonymity, if you will. And a year later, on her next birthday, has another crazy encounter where she learns for the first time that she is not the only strange creature hiding in plain sight. So, she is a werecat, if that was not obvious. And what is so entertaining about this book is that a lot of the book is told from the point of view of her in that cat stage or phase, or however you'd like to say it. So we're getting it from a cat's perspective, and it's super entertaining. I think that the author did a great job of getting into the mindset. It was just really enjoyable. Now, I gave this one 4 stars because the beginning in particular really rushes things along and just doesn't give a lot of detail or explanation or really spend any time on anything at all. It's just this happens, it freaks her out, she moves, and then the next thing happens, and she just kind of goes with it. For the first probably 20% of the book, maybe 30% of the book, things are just rushed along at such a pace that it kind of lost something for me. And I'll be honest, during that portion, I thought, okay, the book is okay, but it really wasn't capturing my attention. And I almost kind of wanted to give up on it, in fact. But once it hits a certain point, it's like everything started clicking for the author, and she just took off from there. So I gave it 4 stars. I think it's a fantastic book. This is an indie author. We have to support these indie authors as much as we can, and this is a really enjoyable one. It's got a great cover. I'm probably going to pick up a physical copy here eventually myself, but one that I can highly suggest for you folks if urban fantasy is your thing. Alright, so when I finished that ebook, I had basically decided that I was going to go back through my Kindle backlog, go to the oldest thing that I owned on there that I had not read, and just start working my way through. So the next thing on the list was Manners and Monsters by Tilly Wallace. And interestingly enough, this is another Regency supernatural fantasy type thing, which I did just finish. A really excellent trilogy that had some similarities to this book and its continuing series, but was different enough that I feel like I don't necessarily need to compare them apples to apples. So in this one, magic is real. In the not too distant past, there was a French attack in England, basically, where the French mages cursed this beauty product, this beauty powder, and it was given to the high society folk there in England. Those who were wealthy enough to get it anyway used it, and it basically turned them into zombies. So in the current time period, this girl named Hannah helps her father, who is a prominent scientist, in trying to determine how the mage even did this and whether or not there is a cure. Now, her mom was actually the greatest mage in England, and she also fell victim to this. So she is working in her own way to try and figure it out. Hannah's dad is working in his way, and she is just kind of in the middle trying to help them both, whilst also taking part in society. Now, she is no longer considered of high class, because once that person is dead, they lose all of their privilege, their title, everything like that. So basically, the privilege that they had from her mom's rank is now null and void, despite the fact that she is still a person. She's just a living dead person. The afflicted, they are in control of themselves, most of them, but they have to eat what is affectionately called pickled cauliflower, which is just donor brains that are sold to them for a crazy price, but it's kind of their only option. Well, there is a wedding ceremony happening, and someone is murdered and their brains are scooped out. So of course Hannah and her dad know that this must have been some sort of rogue afflicted attack. Hannah ends up getting stuck with this inspector that no one really likes in trying to determine who amongst the high society killed this man and ate his brains. This is a book that enjoys its humor, but also has its serious side. So it's a little bit Jane Austen, but also a little bit Pride and Prejudice and zombies, more than just Pride and Prejudice. I'd argue that it's probably better written though than that particular parody. And so I gave this one 4 stars. My biggest gripe, I think, was that the villain of the story, it was pretty darn obvious, and so the reveal really wasn't that much of a reveal. So that and some other instances of that sort of thing where the big twist or shock that comes really isn't that shocking or twisty for that matter, that did detract away a little bit. But the book was still very enjoyable. The humor I thought really worked. It wasn't over the top, but it was just humorous enough to get a chuckle from me before we continued on with the scene. So I really appreciated that as well. Again, I gave this one 4 stars, and I do intend to continue the series, but rather than purchase the Kindle versions, I'm going directly through the author to hopefully be able to, well, actually own those ebooks rather than just borrow them. So the only physical book this time was a new release. This is Ernest Jensen with Nameless Things. This one sounded really crazy. I ended up pre-ordering it, in fact, because of how crazy it sounded. This is about some friends that are hiking in Devil's Cup State Park. A meteor crashes to the earth, and they go to explore and basically get lost and stuck out there with these killer worm things that evidently must have landed with the meteor. So these things burrow into the skin. They pretty much eat the person from inside. This one had some over-the-top humor as well, and actually had some really good humor, in fact. I'm going to say that was probably the best part of the book, is that it had some good humor, and there was a scene or two that was just so absurd but great that I had to appreciate it. Something where I never would have thought to write it, but as an actual scenario, it's one of those things that you yourself would experience, and it's like, yeah, of course this is happening. Yeah, it's probably never happened before, but yes, it's going to happen to me right now. And I know we've all had those kinds of experiences. So there's some of that in this book where I felt like, man, if that was actually going to happen, it would happen to me. And so I appreciated that, and I appreciated some of the humor. My main issue with this book, though, is that for being a book about these killer worms coming after people in the wilderness, it just wasn't that exciting, honestly. There were long stretches where it felt like no progress was being made, where nothing was really happening. And once the action does get started, it very quickly feels like rinse and repeat. They meet up with some new people. Someone does something stupid and the worms attack. They lose some people. They get away. They regroup the next day. And then the cycle repeats. So I had issues with those. It still might have been around a 3-star, but then the ending happened, and this might be one of the most abrupt endings I've ever read in a book. And it's one of those where it just doesn't even really feel like an ending, you know. Went back then to make sure that I didn't miss something, and I said, oh, no, well, there you go. That's our ending. And it was wholly unsatisfying. So, at the end of the day, I decided to give this one 2 stars. Again, some satisfyingly funny scenes and conversations in the book, and the worms could have been great, but I just felt like the author wasn't ready to tackle what they were trying to tackle. And they've got to learn how to write an ending, because that's not an ending in any way, shape, or form. As far as what I'm reading now and what I plan to get to next, I decided to take a quick little break after the last physical book that I read and just grab something random off of my YA and kids section for a quick little read. So I went with M.M. Ragg's Eyeballs for Midnight Snack. Evidently this is actually part of a series about these kids. So this is the only one I have. I picked it up wholly because of the title, and it's going to be a quick and easy thing to either enjoy or call off my shelf. So when I finish with Eyeballs for Midnight Snack, I'm getting into one that is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. It's a book that I've heard about over the years, but this is a crime thriller, and that's not typically my thing. However, I have the book, I've been curious about the book, and I've always heard good things about the book. So I'm going to kind of jump out of my comfort zone and read Scott Turo's Presumed Innocent. Now, if I remember correctly, this is about a man who is married. I don't even know if it's happily married or if there's issues with the marriage or what. But he is married. He ends up in an affair with this other woman. That woman turns up dead. And to take it a step further, he is then convicted of her murder. So his whole life is kind of imploding all at once, it sounds like. And this is one that, again, I've heard of it over the years, heard great things about it, but I'm not usually a crime thriller or legal thriller type person. I want to say I've probably only read 1 or 2 books by Scott Turo in my lifetime, and it's been a long time, so I don't even really remember his style particularly. But I'm interested to get into this one. It's a new month. We'll try a new genre for Josh, right? Now, as far as my ebooks, again, I'm kind of going through the oldest books that I own. So the next one in line was actually a memoir from a man that was in the wrestling business for about 50 years or so. I watched some wrestling as a kid, and I don't know, I always thought it was pretty cheesy and ridiculous. But I was more intrigued about the behind-the-scenes stuff, about how all this was put together and how they kept this, essentially this soap opera going for so long. So this is one I more wanted to read because I wanted to know about the history of wrestling from the Carney days forward. And I thought that with this man's knowledge, I'd get some more of that background. Or at least that's what I'm thinking. It's been a long, long time since I picked this ebook up, but it was next to my list. I'm about halfway into it, and we're just going to see how the rest of it goes from there. So far, it's been fairly informative. Some really interesting anecdotes, and I don't have a whole lot else to report about it, honestly. If you're curious, it's Slobber Knocker by Jim Ross. I don't remember what's on the docket following this one, though, but I have another 250 pages, so I have a little time to figure that out. So that is going to be it for this particular video. It's actually quite a bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but I still like this format. It lets me really talk more about these books instead of just giving a quick rating and a yeah, it was good and general descriptions and blah blah blah. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you would prefer going back to the monthly wrap-up. If so, let me know down below. And if there's any particular kind of video you want to see, it's the same thing, just let me know below. But for now, I'm going to wrap this one up. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next one, but we'll see. So, thank you all for joining me. I hope you stay safe, have a great week or weekend, and most importantly, drink great coffee. Cheers.